Today we're tackling something huge, maybe the biggest question there is: consciousness. Specifically, how does this 3-pound lump of brain tissue actually create a mind? And crucially, how does it make that mind feel like yours?
Yeah, it's a massive undertaking. We're diving into Antonio Damasio's framework, which, let's be honest, can be pretty challenging to get through on your own.
Right, so consider this your shortcut. We're focusing on those two big questions. How does the brain build a mind?
Yeah.
And then how does it switch on the lights, make it conscious?
And the core idea we're exploring is that it's not just one thing. Consciousness, in this view, is built up like in stages.
Layers, almost.
Exactly, layers, revolving around this idea of a self process. And maybe counterintuitively, it's all grounded in the body and some really, really old parts of the brain.
Okay, so our mission for you today.
Yeah.
Unpack these layers, the proto-self, the core self, the autobiographical self, and really try to understand why the body is supposedly the bedrock, the rock, as the source puts it, for all of this conscious experience.
Let's do it.
All right, first things first. Before consciousness, before even self, what's the brain fundamentally for? What's its prime directive, let's say?
Well, it boils down to something surprisingly basic. Managing life, keeping the organism, viable, safe, and running efficiently.
Governed by biological value?
That's the term, yeah. Biological value. It's this constant underlying drive to maintain the right conditions for life. Homeostasis, basically. Everything else serves that goal.
So thinking complex thoughts, writing poetry, that's secondary.
In a way, yes. Those are incredibly powerful tools that help us manage life better, more strategically. But the absolute non-negotiable is keeping the organism alive and stable. If that fails, well, nothing else matters, does it?
Makes sense.
Yeah.
And the brain's main tool for achieving this stability, this life management, is making maps. It's a born cartographer.
Exactly that. It's maybe the brain's most defining skill, this constant, relentless map making. It maps the outside world, obviously, but critically, it maps the inside world.
The state of the body itself.
The state of the body, the internal chemical environment, even its own ongoing processes. It's creating these dynamic neural patterns that represent what's happening moment by moment.
And those maps, those patterns, are what we actually experience as images.
Precisely. Images is the key term here, but you have to think broader than just sight or sound.
Right, not just pictures.
No. It includes feelings from your gut, the sense of your body in space, textures, pain, pleasure, even abstract concepts like relationships between things. These neural patterns, experienced as images, are the fundamental currency of the mind.
So just having this flow of organized images, that is a mind.
According to this framework, yes.
Yeah.
The presence of an organized flow of these multimodal images constitutes a mind, but, and this is the crucial bit, it's not necessarily a conscious mind yet.
Okay. So you can have a mind without consciousness.
That's the idea. You have this rich stream of information, but without a self-process layered on top, there's no sense of ownership, no subjectivity, no feeling that these images are happening to me.
Which brings us right to that intuition problem, doesn't it? The feeling that our mind is somehow separate, not physical.
Exactly. The misleading intuition. It feels non-physical, right? Like it floats free from the body sometimes. That's why people often jump to, quantum explanations or other mysteries.
Because the experience itself doesn't feel like neurons firing.
Correct. The conscious self, the way we experience it directly, feels sort of distinct. But the argument here is, look, that's a feature of the experience, not proof of non-physicality. The hypothesis is actually quite stark.
Which is?
Mental events are brain events. They are specific, complex patterns of neural activity. Full stop. The real puzzle isn't if they're physical, but how these physical events generate that feeling of me-ness, of subjectivity.
Okay, so if mind is physical, the self needs a physical anchor. And the proposal is look down, not up.
Yeah.
Look to the body, not just the fancy cortex.
That's the move. Why the body? Because it's the one constant. The brain maps lots of things, but the body is the only object it is permanently, inextricably linked with.
A continuous loop of information.
A resonant loop, yeah. Body sends signals to the brain sends signals back to the body, nonstop. That unwavering connection provides the stable platform needed for any sense of self to be built upon.
And that foundation, that first layer built on this body map stability, is the proto-self.
The proto-self, think of it as the absolute ground floor. It's this collection of neural patterns mapping the most stable, most enduring aspects of your body's structure and state.
Like what specifically?
The internal milieu, so the chemical balance, the basic parameters of your tissues, your organs, the visceral state, the really slow-changing fundamental facts of your physical existence.
And location-wise, this is where it gets weird for most people, right? Not the cortex.
Definitely not the cortex. This is happening primarily in the upper brainstem. We're talking ancient structures.
Right.
Structures with names like the nucleus of the solitary tract, NTS,
Yeah.
the parabrachial nucleus, PBN, the pericaudal gray, PH, really fundamental, evolutionarily old parts of the brain.
Tiny little nuclei, but absolutely critical.
Foundational. Because they are the main hubs processing information from the body heart rate, gut feelings, temperature, pain signals, toxins, everything about the internal state. They monitor the core business of staying alive.
And the immediate output of this proto-self monitoring is primordial feelings.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is maybe the most basic form of feeling. Not complex emotions like joy or anger yet, but this continuous background, wordless sense of existence.
Like the hum of the engine.
That's a great way to put it. A baseline feeling reflecting the current state of life. Is it generally okay? Is there distress? It's that bedrock sense of being, fluctuating between pleasure and pain, comfort and discomfort.
And this happens before any complex thought.
Absolutely. It's happening constantly, non-linguistically. It's the anchor. And crucially, if you damage these brainstem areas, consciousness can vanish completely, even if the cortex is fine.
Wow. Okay, so consciousness starts in the basement
Yeah.
with the body's basic feelings.
In this model, yes. It's fundamentally tied to life regulation right from the start.
So we have existence mapped. We have this baseline feeling, but still no me, no subjectivity. When does that feeling kick in the sense that I'm the one experiencing these images?
That's the next layer up, the
Sure.
core self. And this is where subjectivity emerges. The core self is all about action and the immediate moment-by-moment link between you, the organism, and whatever you're currently engaging with.
An object, an event.
Anything that grabs your attention. So how does it create ownership? By essentially making the mind the protagonist of its own story.
How does that work mechanistically?
Okay, so imagine an object appears, a loud sound, a flash of light. Your organism reacts. You turn your head, your attention focuses, maybe your heart rate changes slightly. This interaction, this engagement.
It changes something internally.
Exactly. It momentarily modifies the proto-self. It shifts that baseline primordial feeling. Your internal state before the object isn't the same as your internal state during the engagement with the object.
So is it the change in my internal state prompted by the object? That's key.
That's the critical insight. The brain instantly maps that change. Something happened, and my physical state changed because of it. That mapping of the change generates two things almost instantly.
Lucha.
First, a very brief, time-locked feeling of knowing that specific object. And second, it makes that object salient. It focuses attention on it. The registration is, my state shifted in relation to that.
That's a birth of subjectivity right there. The feeling of I experienced this comes from registering the internal impact.
Precisely. The core self is like this incredibly fast, nonverbal narrative constantly playing out. Here's the object. Here's how my proto-self just changed. Here's the resulting feeling. This narrative implicitly creates the protagonist, the material me, and generates that sense of ownership over the experience.
So core consciousness is this constant pulse, always on, always tying us to the present moment through the body's reaction.
Relentless, yeah. A constant stream of now. And again, heavily reliant on that brainstem machinery interacting with slightly higher structures.
But human consciousness is obviously more than just this moment-to-moment awareness. We have history, plans.
Right. We need memory, foresight, a sense of identity over time. That takes us to the top floor, the autobiographical self.
This is the me we usually think about, isn't it? The social self, the person with a past and a future.
Exactly. Your life story, your relationships, your plans, your values. Normal, everyday human consciousness involves all three levels. Proto-self, core self, and this autobiographical self working together seamlessly most of the time.
But the autobiographical self seems way more complex.
Yeah.
How does the brain handle storing and retrieving all that biographical information?
It's a huge challenge. Memories aren't like video files stored neatly in one spot. They're stored as potential patterns, implicitly, across vast networks in the higher order cortex. It's called the dispositional space.
Like blueprints.
Kind of, yeah. Blueprints or formulas for reconstructing the memory. These potentials are organized by things called convergence divergence zones, or CDZs. Think of them like major airport hubs that connect different aspects of a memory: the sight, the sound, the feeling, the context.
So recalling a memory means activating the right hubs to reconstruct the pattern.
Exactly. You have to pull that potential pattern out of storage in the cortex, turn it back into active images, and here's the tricky part. You need to link that reconstructed memory with the core self process happening way down in the brainstem
Why link it back down there?
to make it feel conscious and yours, to give that recalled memory the feeling of, I am experiencing this now. Otherwise, it's just data retrieval, not a conscious recollection.
Okay, that sounds incredibly complex. Coordinating between the huge cortical networks and the tiny brainstem structures.
It's described as coordinating a symphony of Mullerian proportions. You need this vast cortical orchestra playing the complex score of your life story, but the feeling of it being your symphony, the subjective part, relies on channeling it through those ancient core structures.
So who's the conductor? Are we back to needing a little guy in the head?
No, thankfully, no homunculus. The idea is that certain brain regions are just architecturally suited to be coordinators. They don't know everything, but their position and connections allow them to facilitate this complex integration.
Which regions are we talking about?
Key players seem to be the posteromedial cortices, PMCs, areas known to be involved in self-related thought and memory integration, and crucially, the thalamus.
The thalamus, isn't it just a relay station?
It's often called that, but here it's more like the essential marriage broker. It sits perfectly placed between the cortex and the brainstem, allowing for that massive two-way communication needed to bring memory and core self together. It makes the symphony possible.
So it's less a top-down conductor and more like critical infrastructure enabling spontaneous organization.
That's a good way to think about it. And here's a mind bender. The self, the conductor we feel ourselves to be, isn't really directing the show from the start. It actually emerges from the performance.
It's constructed on the fly.
It's constructed dynamically, moment by moment, from the primordial feelings bubbling up and the narrative process linking everything together. The feeling of being a stable, continuous self is itself a constantly refreshed creation of the brain.
Wow. Okay. But even with all this cortical complexity for the autobiographical self, the brainstem, the proto-self, remains fundamental.
Absolutely non-negotiable. Functional precedence. You damage that core machinery generating primordial feelings, and the whole edifice of consciousness, including the rich autobiographical self, collapses. The cortex can hold the entire score, but without the brainstem's contribution, the music stops playing consciously.
The rock. It
Yeah.
always comes back to the body and its most basic representation in the brainstem.
It's the anchor. Proto-self first, enabling core self, which then provides the platform for the autobiographical self.
So to kind of wrap this up a bit,
Huh.
we have these three layers of self, broadly linked to three brain regions: brainstem, thalamus as broker, and cortex. What's the big evolutionary win for having this incredibly complex, layered consciousness?
The big win is deliberation, offline thinking. Most organisms react directly to the environment. Stimulus, response. Consciousness, especially the autobiographical self, allows us to disconnect from the immediate present.
To think about the past, to plan for the future.
Exactly. To reflect, weigh options, simulate scenarios, make decisions over hours, days, weeks. It's a completely different level of life management. It allows for planning, strategy, culture, all the things that make human existence so different. It's a radical upgrade.
A way to manage biological value much more effectively in the long run.
Precisely. And maybe one final thought to leave you with, something really provocative from the source material. What if that powerful feeling we have, the conscious will to live, the drive to prevail, what if it didn't start as some high-level philosophical concept?
What did it start as?
What if it actually began as the sum total, the aggregate of the tiny unconscious wills of every single cell in your body, all striving to maintain their own viability?
The collective hum of trillions of cells wanting to stay alive.
Yeah. And the unique trick of neurons, especially those connected to the body, is their ability to signal about that state, their aboutness. This allows that collective cellular striving to be translated, amplified, and represented as a unified conscious feeling, a song of affirmation, as Damasio calls it.
So our deepest conscious drive could be a scaled-up echo of basic cellular life.
It connects the highest levels of mind right back down to the fundamental biology of our cells. It suggests the solution to the mind-body problem isn't necessarily out there in exotic physics, but deep within the biological imperative itself.
That is definitely something to chew on, a powerful connection between the cellular level and conscious will.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for unpacking that complex framework.
My pleasure. It's fascinating stuff.
Absolutely. Okay, that's all for this deep dive. We'll continue exploring the brain and consciousness next time. Thanks for tuning in.